Good morning, everyone. So I have worked with some of you before and some of you are new to me. The purpose of this webinar is to share with you the top 5 tips for better emails. I'm Jenny Morse, and my area of expertise is helping people who are professionals. So professionals in all kinds of spaces. I work with a lot of engineers, salespeople, HR people, psychologists, clinicians, people, anyone who is a professional who has to communicate for their job. I work with those people to help them improve their writing skills because as you know, you have to write for your job, but you've been trained to do something entirely different. You're not a professional writer, you're a professional who writes. And so I have, as a professional writer and editor, had the privilege of sharing the things that I know with people who have to write in order to get their jobs done. So the goal today is for me to share the top 5 things that you can do to improve your emails. And when I teach and work with groups, so I do a lot of corporate training where I go into a company and I work with them for 3 hours or 6 hours on training them in credibility, in planning, in habits and strategies they can use to improve their writing. And when we say improve, I mean both to make you faster, like more efficient, because since so many of you are professionals, you're really good at your jobs, but haven't created a writing habit that supports you and leads to good outcomes. So we want to try to change those habits around writing that you have in order to make you stronger. Those are things that I work with companies on. And then I also have a 6-week program, which I'll talk about a little bit at the end here, but a 6-week program that helps any professional who wants to work on their writing, guides them through these strategies for changing your habits and learning the techniques that will make you more effective. I think it might come up a little bit today, the AI and ChatGPT and how that is affecting our writing, but I was reviewing a couple of samples from ChatGPT this morning. And it's very fascinating how the exact things that I teach in my classes are things that the chatbot can't do. So it's pretty obvious to me that it doesn't have strong, deft writing communication skills yet. So we can talk about that too. I wanted to start by allowing you to ask any questions or suggestions that you have, like what brings you here this morning? What are you hoping to learn? What do you think might be on my list of the top 5 tips? We'll start with just if anyone wants to share what brings you here this morning and what are you hoping to learn? Or this evening, sorry for those of you who are joining from different time zones.
Jenny, can I go?
Yes, please do.
Yeah, Jenny, thanks for having this session. See, the way we communicate by email is changing quite dramatically, right? You know, if I write a 2-pager email, nobody's going to look at it. So a person like me always communicates with employees, with my partners, my customers, my prospective customers. So I just would like to learn from you, you know, what's the best way to communicate given today's age, right? With the chat GPT age, what's the best way to communicate, how we can keep it succinct and, you know, make it work for us. I mean, that's my goal here. I invited some of my colleagues also, so they can take advantage of this session as well.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much, Nagesh. Yes, and I think that most of us are struggling with this idea that we have so much content that is coming into us all the time, right? And so many responsibilities. We have to read it, think about it, and respond to it. And how can we do that faster so that the messages that we're sending to people are actually tailored for them to read, right, and benefit from? So how can we make sure that the messages we're sending are going to get read? Greg, I see that you put that in the chat. How to get people to read the email before deleting it. Yeah. Yeah, do you want to say more about that?
Just that it's a challenge. I think the previous speaker hit on, you know, we have so much content and it's hard because you want to put it all in one email, but maybe it's just how to condense it so it's a shorter one people are willing to read.
Yeah, awesome. And Tanner, yes, you're exactly right. Time is money, right? And that's why I sort of discuss this as you're professionals, but you're not professional writers. And so you're being paid to get something else done. And writing is just the medium or mechanism by which you do that, right? And so our goal is really to make you a faster writer and to make the messages that you send more effective for your readers. The things that we learn when we're writing, when people are becoming professional writers, okay, so someone like me who has taken years and years of study to become a professional writer and editor and teacher and trainer, is that when people don't want to read, we use different strategies for connecting with them. When we are trying to write for the reader, we want to prioritize their perspective. And this is a lot of what I teach. We think about, well, I have to tell them this. I have to say this. I need to give them instruction, which is true. But when the reader receives that message, it needs to be tailored to how they're going to read it. So just for example, if you start an email by saying something like, I'm emailing you because I need to tell you this thing. Those first words, I'm emailing you, are I-centered. They're about my perspective and my experience. And when the reader opens my email and the very first thing that they read is, I'm writing you, the reader is like, yes, you are. Right? So you wasted their time at the beginning of that message because they already know that you're writing to them, they're reading it. We want to think about thinking about how we can transform our messages so that the reader receives them as if they're designed for that person and not like they're just stream of thought coming out of our head. Does that make sense?
So Jenny, in effect, we should always think from their perspective, right? It's not like what's in it for me, it's what's in it for them, right?
That's exactly right. And this comes in all of the things that we do, like why should they do a particular task? Or when do we need a deadline? I'm going to talk about some of those things. So that we're always thinking about how they're going to receive the message, the other person's perspective, and try to write from there. Now, things that I teach that I don't have time to go through today, this is just a short 1 hour here, some helpful things. But things that I teach are, for example, strategies like how to better plan your messages. So I have, as part of the 6-week course, an entire module is dedicated to teaching you how to plan effective messages, which is related to the psychology of our brain. Okay, so we want to think about things like, how can we get our brain to talk to a person who's not in front of us? When I'm writing an email, I'm not looking at the person face to face. How can I trigger my brain to think about that person as real so that it will choose language that connects with that person? And some of that is just asking yourself a couple questions about who they are and what they're like and what they care about. What do they know? And then thinking through, okay, if this is the person I'm talking to and I'm trying to talk to them about this content, then what comes out there? How do those two things mesh to create a strong message? So I have a process. It's 7 questions to ask yourself before you plan anything. That's part of my 6-week course that helps you train your brain to do that thinking about other people. Yeah. We all do this when we're face to face pretty easily. So if you're looking at the person, you're like, yes, I'm talking to you. But if you're not looking at them, then it can be a little bit harder. We're all looking at this screen in front of us. All right, other things that came up, questions you had that brought you to this session today. Or you're just ready to get into the content and find out what you don't know yet. All right, so we have top 5 tips for better emails. I will tell you that I've become a bit of an expert in email. So I can talk about any one of these things for an hour. If you have questions or you want more information, add them, unmute, ask, put them in the chat. I'm trying to give you just a couple of quick things, but we could talk about any one of these for a long time. So we'll start with number 1. When you are writing to somebody, the greeting is the most important part of the message for setting the tone. It is the hello, right? It's the moment that you say hi and try to capture that person's attention. Now, you might think that the subject line is the first thing that captures their attention. And while it does, the subject line isn't in your voice. So when we read subject lines, we hear them as from the computer, not from the person's voice. The hi, hello, dear is the very first thing that we hear that's in your voice. Okay, so we're going to hear you talking to us. What I mean by you should have one is that you can choose whatever greeting you think is appropriate. I mean, not any greeting, but from a sort of set list of appropriate ways to say hello to people. So you can use dear if you want to, it's very formal. You can use hello or hi. You can use good morning, good afternoon. In our American culture, we don't use good day. Okay, British people, Australian people might use good day, and that covers the entire time spectrum. American culture, we say good morning or good afternoon. It doesn't matter in your email what time they're going to read it. Okay, so you can use good morning or good afternoon, whatever makes sense for you. But you don't need to worry about what time they're going to read it. Sharon, I see you asking if you can use hey. Hey is at this moment in time considered too informal to use in a message to somebody that you don't already have a relationship with. So we see a lot of hey there. Those are considered by most people, and this is generational and cultural difference, but by most people that you're writing to, hey is going to be too informal to work on everybody. And what that means, if I don't know you, I want to start with a greeting that's on the approved list. Dear, hello, hi, good morning, good afternoon. Okay, because if I use one of those greetings, I'm likely to be able to build a relationship with you. If I start with hey or hey there are some people who that's not going to feel good to them. They're not going to want to respond to your message because you're already trying to pretend that you know them and you don't know them at all. It's much easier to move from a formal greeting to an informal one. We're more accepting of that shift than we are if you start informal. It's hard to backtrack. Okay, so if you use hi, hello, good afternoon, and somebody writes back hey, then you should feel free to respond with hey, right? We've moved from formal to informal. But if you start with hey and they don't write you back, you've hit a person who's not comfortable with hey as the greeting. All right, in addition to that, it is really important according to research that your greeting has two parts. So what we're talking about right now has been the greeting word or phrase, the hi, the hello, good afternoon, good morning. You have to have the greeting word or phrase and the person's name, okay? So you have to have those two parts. I work with some, they're often engineers, so it tends to be in that field or manufacturing, where people will start a message with just the person's name. So they would just call out, Jenny, comma, and start their message. And for most people, so the research shows that more than 60% of people feel best about a greeting that uses a greeting word or phrase and a name. What that means is that fewer than 30-something% are okay with a message that starts with just their name. So you want to avoid that unless you're absolutely certain that the person accepts that, right? Is already comfortable with that name. So what we want to do when we're writing to people we don't know, we don't have relationships with, we want to make sure that we have a greeting word or phrase and a name. Okay, so here is just a potential list to show you what it could look like. Dear is most formal. And so when we're using dear, we're often using the person's title and their last name, Dear Ms. Smith. You can use a comma after that, but I just want to show you that the most formal greeting that we have actually involves the punctuation. So if you say, Dear Ms. Smith, colon, you can imagine the colon as being like, please stay over there. I don't want a relationship with you, okay? When we use the comma after the greeting, you can think of it as sort of like a one-armed hug. So you're like, hey, what's up? So if it's Dear Ms. Smith, comma, that's slightly less formal than Dear Ms. Smith, colon. Now you can do the same with good afternoon, Mallory Smith. So that one is still formal because now it's first and last name. And you can put a colon at the end. That's still going to be stay over there. Or you can do the comma, the one-armed hug, right, at the end. You can also do good afternoon, comma, Mallory, comma. That's going to be pretty standard. Like we see that a lot. It's very normal, acceptable formality. And then hi, Mallory, comma is going to be the least formal one. Right now at this particular moment, that's the least formal, that's acceptable to send and use on people that you don't know. Okay, so hi, Mallory is the least formality you can use with someone you don't know. If you go to hey, Mallory, or hey there, Mallory, that's going to be too informal for most people that you don't know. All right, so besides hey or hey there, do you see any other greetings you want to ask about? Something that you do or you've seen and you're not sure if it's acceptable?
I a lot of times start just with the name. I think I need to change that. I use dear a lot. I use dear quite a bit, you know.
Yeah, so dear is perfectly fine, a little bit formal for the American culture standards.
Yeah.
Using just a name really doesn't feel good to most people unless you know them very well. Other questions or thoughts on the greeting? Oh, Greg, you start with thanks or thank you. So you're responding to them in your messages? Yes. So if you include the name, you do need a comma. How about addressing larger group? Good afternoon, team. Yes. Okay. So first, let's start with a question about the comma. You'll see in my examples on the slide, dear Ms. Smith does not have a comma after dear. Good afternoon does have a comma after good afternoon, right? But before the name. Hi, Mallory should technically have a comma after hi. So it should be hi, comma, Mallory, comma. But we tend not to do that because the word hi, H-I, spelled that way, only has one meaning. Okay, so hi, H-I, only means hello, a greeting. It's not going to be mistaken for anything else. But good afternoon, good can be used in lots of different ways. Afternoon can be used in lots of different ways. So the comma between good afternoon and the name actually indicates that you're saying good afternoon to the person. If you have no comma there, good afternoon, Mallory, no comma between it, then you're calling Mallory a good time, which is not acceptable in our professional spaces. So you want to make sure that you're using a comma, and this is the rule, big picture. You're always using a comma between what you are saying and who you are saying it to. So in writing, the way that we show I'm saying this to you is with a comma between those things. So if you say like, happy birthday, Greg, that's happy birthday, comma, Greg, exclamation point. Or congratulations, team, it's congratulations, comma, team, exclamation point. Okay, so there's always going to be a comma between what you are saying and who you are saying it to. Yes, Judy, whom. So if we were British, we would use whom in our speech, but American English tends to drop the M in our speech, which makes it very difficult for us to know when to use it in our formal writing, when it sounds correct. So sometimes I will do it and I will overemphasize it, and sometimes I drop it depending on the conversation that I'm having. You're exactly right, though. Excellent. All right, and let's see. Gitesh, I'm not sure how to say your name. Feel free to correct me. I see that you're asking about hello name, comma. Yes, that is perfectly acceptable to use. And again, hello, since it can't be misunderstood, well, grammatically, it should be hello, comma, name, comma. Since hello can't be misinterpreted, it's fine to say hello, name, comma. Hi or hello, followed by the name, and then starting with greetings for the day. I'm going to talk about that in a second. So tip number 2, what should you do after the greeting? Let me give 1 second, one pause. Anybody have additional questions about the greeting at the beginning of the message? If not, we will go to number 2, the nicety. So Gitesh, as you mentioned, greetings for the day is the thing that you say after the hi or hello. And we call that the nicety because it's the moment where you say, you know, hope you're doing well, or hope you had a great weekend, happy Monday, whatever it is, you're saying something nice at the beginning of your message. And this is lovely. It's expressing a warmth and you know, feeling, caring about the other person that most people will appreciate. Except in writing, people are not going to read your entire message, right? We know that. They're not going to read the whole thing. No matter how short it is, it seems like they're not going to read the whole thing. So with the space, the sentence after the greeting is the place that most people are most likely to read. So when we do research on how people read, and they strap lasers to people's heads and like have them read documents and track where their eyes go, the most valuable real estate in your message is that the first sentence after the greeting. And this is why I'm going to recommend that we don't put the nicety in that space, because people aren't going to read your whole message. And the thing that they're most likely to look at, if you put the nicety there, then you fill that space with something that's not purposeful, not useful, right? So what I like to do, because I want to feel like a good, caring person, so I want the nicety in the message, I tend to write it first. I recommend here. So I write it first, and then I copy. Okay, so you can see, hope you're doing well, and my sample message has been highlighted in orange. I copy it, cut it, and I move it to the end of the message. And what this does, I feel like a good person because I wrote, hope you're doing well. Okay, I wrote that first. But, and this is what I was saying at the beginning, I'm crafting my message for how my audience is going to read it by moving the nicety to the end of the message. Because from my audience's perspective, the greeting has already been a nice thing. I already said hi to them. And the next thing they want to know is, why did I write to them? That's what I have to say next in that most important real estate. And now they're going to listen to some details about what they have to do and why they have to do it. And by the time they get to the end of the message, they've been listening to me drone on about whatever it is, right? Hi, Mallory. They're excited. They're happy. Could you send me the signed contract when you have a chance? Now, I've been talking for a little while. They've been reading it. Hope you're doing well brings up that tone at the end again. So I go like, hi, right? Hi, enthusiasm, caring, drop it down to work, and then bring it back to enthusiasm and caring before ending the message. So from the reader's experience, this is going to be more successful for communicating with them. How do you all feel about this? What are your thoughts?
It streamlines things and takes into account everybody else's time.
Yeah, great. I love that. Exactly. We're thinking about how we can get our work done fast and efficient, right?
Yeah, nobody wants to sit there and have a phone conversation through emails.
Exactly. You wrote to them, so they just need to read it for the information. And they want to like you. They want to feel good about it, but that's not the most important thing in writing. Craig, that's it exactly. Write it first so you feel good, move it to the end so they feel good. Exactly. Oh, where's the please, Judy? Yes. Oh. Okay, so where is the please, Judy asked. That's great, Judy. I talk about a lot of rhetorical techniques. So rhetorical is the way that you construct a sentence in order to get the best result from the other person. And so if we're making a statement like sign the contract, that would be considered pretty aggressive or rude. Sign the contract. So we usually soften that statement with a please sign the contract. When you frame something as a question, that already elevates the tone of the instruction, right? So when I say change it from sign the contract to please sign the contract, could you send me the signed contract? That's actually the nicest because of how we pitch questions in our head. You can always make it even more nice and say, could you please send me the signed contract? But you can hear how I'm raising my voice each time. Sign the contract. Please sign the contract. Could you send me the contract? Could you please send me the contract? So that's what we're doing with how we structure that sentence, is we're changing the pitch in our voice. And so please, right, is always going to be polite. And whether you use it or not depends on the relationship to the person. We do a lot of work on tone in we do a lot of work on tone in the 6-week program. So we talk through all of those strategies and how to make those choices so that the sentence is going to be best for your audience. Can we please write, requesting to you kindly sign the contract? How does that sound? Well, it's not going to flow easily in American English. So I'm going to say that depends on who you're communicating with and their cultural background. Excuse me. Requesting that you kindly sign the contract. So I would change it to requesting that you kindly sign the contract. That's going to be a sentence fragment, right? It's not a complete idea. So you're leaving off the I'm requesting that you kindly sign the contract. And I get why. We're going to talk about I next. Gitesh, you're just like a little bit ahead of me with all of your questions today. We're going to talk about I in the next tip. But we do want to think about how we are getting people to actually take action. So in doing our jobs, right, we want what you're supposed to do to be clear. That is absolutely the most important thing, is that it's clear, that you understand what you're supposed to do. Because the kindest thing we can do is make other people's jobs easy. And we make them easy by making them clear. The second most important thing for us to do is to think about how we frame that clarity. Because when we're very clear, it can often feel too curt or abrasive or rude, right? So if we're too clear, it's going to be blunt. And that's why we work on the strategies for tone, for how people are going to feel about how we say things. Because when we are clear and nice, that gets us the best results. And that's why I teach these strategies to people. So what would I recommend for Gitesh, your suggestion? I would say, I think if you just say like, it'd feel more natural to me to ask the question, would you please sign the contract? And that contains all of the request and the kind in it. But those are things that we sort of play around with when we're working in the 6-week program. Other thoughts? Yes, clear, concise, and accurate in 3 minutes or less. So I'm just going to add, it's not just clear, concise, and accurate, because when I throw in the accuracy is part of the clarity. Clear, concise, and nice in 3 minutes or less, because you want people to want to keep working with you. But thanks, Tanner. How many exclamation points in one email? Kelly, thanks for asking. 1. You get 1. Now that 1 exclamation point is particular to people that you don't have a relationship with. And again, just like this greeting that we talked about, tip number 1, when you are writing to people that you don't know, you have no idea how many exclamation points they like. And it is easier to put more in than to take them out of a message that you've already sent. So when you start with 1. You get 1, you want to use it carefully. And Rich, I'm very entertained by your exclamation points in the chat. Thank you. Yes, so an exclamation point simply means that someone is energetic, and that energy can be positive or negative. So we want to be careful with them. That's why you only get 1. And you want it to be clear that you're being nice, right? Hope you had a great weekend, exclamation point. in my sample that's on the screen, hope you're doing well, exclamation point. You want to put the exclamation point on things that can't be misinterpreted as potentially negative, and only put them on positive things until you have enough of a relationship with the other person that you can interpret their use of exclamation points, as Rich and Sharon are demonstrating in the chat right now. Thank you. Okay. Tip 3, making sure that we're in time. Tip 3 is about using I. When we are thinking about communicating with other people, especially in writing, the way that we use I tells us and the other person where our attention is. So how many I's and how many U's tell us whether we're thinking more about ourselves or more about the other person. Now this, I call it a metric. Like, you can count how many I's and how many U's are in a message. And that count can give you an idea of where your attention is, but it also depends on how they're being used, which is a more complicated thing. Okay, but we're paying attention to I and you, because when I'm writing an email to you, how many times I say I and how many times I say you tell me whether I'm thinking about my needs or your needs. So we want to pay attention to them. So this is just some real quick tip, like a little short thing about when to use I and when not to use I. In our email writing, I is incredibly useful for actions you have taken, so past stuff. Like if you want to say, you know, I called the client. If I called them and I'm sharing that information with you, I already did this task. Or actions that I will take in the future. So I can say, I will edit the presentation. That action is now my responsibility, right? So I have called the client. I will edit the presentation. I'm responsible for those things. That's a good use of I. Okay, now the bad uses of I. So we don't want to use I for our thoughts or feelings. This always kind of hurts me as a writer, that I have to tell people in professional messages, we don't use I for our thoughts or feelings. So that's, I was hoping, I was wondering, I think, I feel, I believe, okay? We don't write any of those things down. Why not? Because you're writing the message. So everything in it is already your thoughts, feelings, beliefs, wonders, hopes. And we use that construct when we're talking to each other, and it's totally fine and has a purpose. Okay, so like it's useful when we're talking to each other. I know, I think, I believe. Okay, but when we're writing, again, we're thinking about the other person's experience. And when I say, I was hoping you would help me, I haven't actually asked. All right, let's think about that for a second. When I say to you, I was hoping you would help me out, period. I have not actually asked you for help. And when I speak face to face with you, I can say, I was hoping you would help me out. And then I'll stop talking. And the fact that I stopped talking is how you know that that was actually a question and you're supposed to say something like, sure. But in our email, we don't have that. We don't have that pause. So when I say, I was hoping you would help me out, my message just continues. And I haven't actually asked the other person anything. So instead of using I was hoping or I was wondering if, you want to ask the question, because your email message is trying to get somebody else to do something, and you have to ask them so that they can accept when they write you back. We're also going to avoid using I for present tense actions. Okay, what I mean by present tense actions is when you write sentences about what you're doing right now as you're writing the message. So I started our conversation this morning with the example, I'm writing you, I'm emailing you, right? No, you're not. The reader has received the message. You have already written it. It's in the past. You have already emailed. It's in the past. You sent it to me. So I'm just reminding you, that's that as if it's happening now, but you already wrote the message and sent it to me. So you don't need to say most of those things, most of the present tense actions. I am reminding you. You just say, reminder, deadline is Monday. Okay, you can put other things in the message to make it nice. But the I'm reminding you makes my attention is on me and what I'm doing. And my attention isn't on you and what you need to be doing. Okay, the most important one of these present tense actions that will simplify your life is instead of saying I'm sending or I'm attaching, you say attached is or here is. So whatever you're sending to the other person, you frame from their perspective, which is it's in the message. It's here with the thing that I sent, and not I am attaching it or I am sending it, because that's from my perspective in the present. What questions do you have about this or thoughts? How do you feel?
Actually, I feel very good. Whatever you're telling me is, making sense. More and more I think about it. I try to implement some of these things. I need to master these, but I'm getting good at it, because I write a lot of posts and things like that, also communicate with a lot of clients, not just one or two clients. So these are whatever you would say, very subtle, but, we need to follow that, right? I'm pretty sure you specialize in this area. So a lot of people may not even see this, right? I mean, it's probably like, it's not that apparent, but still it is subconsciously, probably it might really impact them, I think. So these practices are very effective. I'm going to practice more and more the way you are presenting it.
Thanks, Nagesh. I'm glad it's helpful. And I do think you said it's subtle, right? It's small, but this is what's so cool about language, is that the way that we use language is the thing that creates ideas in other people's heads. So how we say something affects how they interpret it, receive it, perceive it. And so these little tiny things are going to change their perception or their experience of working with you. Any other thoughts or questions here? Has anybody opened up an email and started counting how many I's are in it? Don't do that now. Okay. Once you learn the things, only do them moving forward. All right. Tip number 4, deadlines. How we frame deadlines in our messages, like what we were just talking about, affects how other people perceive them. And this has to do with the clarity, the conciseness, and the niceness, all of those things. How do we get other people to understand that things have to be done at a particular time? It's really challenging. First, we want to make sure that we're using concrete dates and times. Okay, what I mean by that is you need to tell people when. And when we say when, it needs to be specific. So if it's due Friday, say Friday. I often will put Friday, the 17th. So I put the date with the day to make it even more clear, right? If you say this Friday, sometimes that can be confusing to people. Is it this Monday or next Monday? And those, this Monday, next Monday, they're relative. They change every week. So when we put this Friday, the 17th, I'm clarifying that when I say this one, I mean this specific date. Yes? Oh, thanks, Sharon. Yes, then they have to check the message date, and that makes it harder for them. Yes, exactly. So we want it to be as easy as possible for them to meet our deadline. And the easiest way to do that is just to tell them explicitly when. When is the deadline? Here it is. And then avoiding general kinds of urgency. Lots of people will put in their messages things like ASAP, now, urgent. And again, these are relative. As the writer, now, right, is now. But if I need something done now, why am I writing to you? Because writing is asynchronous. And what that means is that I get to write it on my time and you get to read it on your time. And so if you are, thanks, Nagesh, really appreciate it. So if you are writing a message that says now, you're already shortchanging yourself. Okay. Now, most of the time we write because we don't have another way of getting a hold of them. I don't want to call them. I don't want to go to their office. Maybe I can't go to their office because they work on the other side of the world. So often there is some limitation that means I'm being forced to write them, even if writing isn't the best way to get a hold of them. But if we're writing, now is already not a functional word. Urgent, ASAP, they start to lose their meaning because our version of as soon as possible is not the same as the reader's experience, who's going to get our message at some other point that's unknown. It also prioritizes your urgency over whatever they have going on. So one of the things that happens if we say, like, sign the contract ASAP, maybe that person is doing something really important, right? Maybe they're talking to a sick relative. Maybe they have had a car accident, right? So they're just dealing with that. We never know what's going on in somebody else's life. And when we use urgent or now or as soon as possible, we're prioritizing our stuff over whatever's going on for them. That does not feel good to anybody. You're trying to demand their attention and demand their time. And what we need to do instead is give them the concrete deadline so that the concrete deadline helps them prioritize no matter what is going on in their life, right? If I tell you when something is due, you can figure out how to organize your time to get that thing done. And I can even create urgency using the concrete deadline. If I say to you, the contract needs to be signed by noon, by today, 2/13 at 12 p.m. I've created urgency. That gives you 45 minutes, right? I've created that urgency, but I haven't had to create the urgency for you or demand it. I've simply given you the information, and now you can prioritize your time to meet that deadline. Questions, thoughts? All right, so some of you in the chat, let's see, Carrie, what do you say instead if you do need something urgently that is past due? Okay, so Carrie, again, you're going to reemphasize the concrete deadline. So you say, like, this, whatever it was, this form was due on this date at this time, and it is now this date at this time. Okay, and you leave them to draw the conclusion. So you leave them to draw the conclusion about it is past due, but all you're going to do is put the specifics. It was due here. This is when. This is how long it's been. And then you're going to follow up with, when will you have it done? Okay. So not that this is the nicest thing that you can say, but it is the nicest thing for past due stuff. It was due here. It is now this much past due. When can I expect to get it from you? And now you're putting the responsibility very directly on the other person. So you're not setting the deadline. You're just asking them to set their own deadline. And most people, not all, okay, I can't fix all people, but most people, when you say when will you have it? They are going to write you back and be like, oh, I forgot, I am doing it now. Okay, hope that is helpful. Day of the week too, yes. So what we're looking for is definitely the date. The day can be helpful, as most of us have regular things, right? This happens every Monday kind of thing. So the day, the date, the time, the more specific, the better. As I learned myself, when you put a time, you should also put the time zone, right? Especially in our modern remote, people are all over the place. So which time zone are you in? Yes, and so creating those concrete deadlines, they will feel the urgency and you didn't put any demand on them. That's what is so effective about that. Yeah. All right, sometimes people write reminder 2 or request 2. Yes, that's just mean. I know that it's useful for them, but to keep track of how many times they've told you that information, but it's mean to do that. The way you remind somebody is to remind them of that concrete deadline, right? So you say X was due this date. Where are we on it? When is it coming? When should I expect it? Right? That's how we treat people respectfully. So that when you're following up, you're saying, I'm aware this thing is past due. When can we expect it? Yeah. I think the goal for all of us is to try to do things on time. You know, I just big picture, like we're always trying to do stuff on time. You just have too many things to do. That's the problem with being a professional. There's just too much all the time. So trying to get back to people and letting them know when they can expect it usually will stop. So they won't have to send reminder number 3. Awesome. Thanks for all of your comments and engagement. It's really fun. All right, so we have one more tip for you, and that is about formatting. So we've talked a bit about creating messages so that other people can read them effectively. And a big part of that is just creating the space and the formatting and arranging it so it's easy to read. I don't know about you, but I get a lot of messages that look like this one, where it's one giant block of text. Do you all get these?
No.
No, lucky you. I see them a lot.
Send the email back and ask for paragraphs.
I wish we could do that and not have it be a little bit rude. But yeah, so when you get these, this is a message where the person hasn't thought about you as a reader at all, right? And we can see that right from how it is organized. It's not organized for a reader. Keeping in mind, right, the research where they strap the lasers to people's heads and watch them read stuff, most people are going to look at the first half of the first line of each paragraph. Okay, so just think how little information that is. The first half of the first line of each paragraph. And so if you're looking at this message, everyone is going to read, I have gone through all emails sent to me since I left yesterday. And then most people are going to be like, good, that sounds about like your job, right? I've gone through all the emails sent to me yesterday. Why are you telling us this? This is an actual email. I change all the names to protect people's privacy, but this is a real email. So somebody wrote that. I've gone through all the emails. Like, yeah, we figured. And then there's no place else for our eyes to land to get the information that we actually need. So what we want to do is think about using things that will direct the reader's attention through the message. The most important one is going to be the white space for paragraphs, just creating multiple paragraphs. But not everything that you write, you're not going to be able to get the most important information into the first half of the first line of each paragraph, right? Or you can just write one line, multiple paragraphs. But there's another thing about patterning. If you create a pattern, it becomes less interesting to the brain. So we're always trying to like keep brains engaged or interested. So if you need to direct someone's attention to information that's not in the first half of the first line of each paragraph, you want to use bold because it stands out visually. It draws the eye in a way that underlining and italics doesn't. Bullets, of course, are super effective. And then I really like to use asterisks around particular words for emphasis. You might think of that as the function of italics, but italics, again, don't draw the eye. They don't make you look. And those asterisks, it's like, what weirdness is going on over here? So I use things that make people look. So here's just an example of how the similar message could have been organized so that it's you focused, so that the information is available for the reader, right? So we have the greeting at the beginning. Schedules for our 2 directors are attached, right, are here. And then we have Kim's schedule, Elizabeth's schedule, and the sign-up sheet for both candidates is attached. So if you're skimming down the side of this message, you get most of the information that you would need, right? This message is about these applicants. Here's the information for one of them, the information for the other one, and you're supposed to sign up. And those last two sentences say, sign up is attached. Please email me, right? So you have the information that you need to follow through on the request. And we really want those spaces so that people can see what we're asking of them. All right, so I'm taking it that most of you get messages that look like the second one. Lucky you all. Hopefully. We all want messages that look like the second one. Which is why I teach formatting strategies in the 6-week program. So in our last couple of minutes here, I'm happy to answer whatever questions that you have, but I also want to thank you for joining me this morning. I do hope that some of these 5 tips are useful to you and that you can apply them immediately or start thinking about them right away. I do, if you're interested in more, I have a 6-week program, the Better Business Writing Pro program. It is award-winning. We won the award in excellence in communication consulting from the Association for Business Communication. And so this is, I mean, quite an honor, but a lot of credibility for our program. So we take professionals through 6 weeks of training and work on all of these kinds of strategies. Our next session starts February 21st, if you're interested in joining us, and our live coaching sessions are during this time. So if you have this hour available, it might work for you to join us. If you are interested, you can scan that QR code and get a special discount on our program for those of you who attended today. So if you scan the QR code, you can go get that. And the first 3 people who sign up for our February program will also get a free copy of my illustrated guide to badass business writing. 6 weeks. So you get 6 hours with me, 6 assignments, 6 writing submissions with feedback. Those are the most time intensive. You get 6 modules full of videos, exercises, quizzes, reading, all things that have been designed. So for all of the videos, exercises, 6 writing assignment feedback, and 6 hours with me for $1,500 for the 6 weeks. And that the QR code will get you a 25% discount. So that's pretty substantial, just as a thank you for joining me this morning. So hopefully some of you will join me and sign up and take advantage of the program to improve your professional writing. And I look forward to working with you all. Cancellation policy is spelled out on the website, so I don't have it memorized off the top of my head, Gitesh, but I can send it to you. And any other questions, I'll stay on. Thank you so much for joining me, and I do hope this was helpful to you.
It was awesome. Thank you.
Thanks.